There's a moment when you stop explaining yourself. Not because you've won, but because you realize the explanation was the trap. And the person waiting for your reaction isn't looking for understanding. They're looking for material. You felt it. That pressure to respond, to defend, to prove you're not what they're claiming. The accusation settles into your chest like a stone, and without thinking, you start talking. You explain your intentions, clarify your words, justify your silence. And as you do, something shifts in their eyes. Not relief, control. The moment you react, they have you. Manipulative people don't fear your anger. They don't fear your boundaries. What they fear is your absence, your refusal to perform. The moment you stop feeding the script they've written for you, something inside them begins to unravel. Because without your reaction, they have nothing to shape, no narrative to twist, no emotion to redirect. You become unreadable, and to someone who survives by reading you, that is unbearable. Jung said we do not see the world as it is. We see it as we are. The manipulator projects onto you the role they need you to play. The villain, the victim, the cold one. They don't see you. They see the character that completes their internal story, and your reactions confirm it. Every defense you offer is rewritten as proof. Every emotion you show is cataloged as ammunition. They are not listening to understand. They are listening to find the weakness. But when you go silent, the projection has nowhere to land. It hangs in the air, unconfirmed. And they are forced, for the first time, to sit with the possibility that the story they've been telling about you isn't real. That's when the panic begins. You'll notice it in the escalation. They'll accuse you of being cruel, withholding. They'll say your silence is violence, that you're punishing them. They'll provoke, apologize, create crises that demand your attention. Because silence to them feels like abandonment. Not of them, of the role you didn't know you were playing. Here's what they won't tell you. Your reactions were never about communication. They were about control. Every time you rushed to explain, you handed them certainty. Certainty that you cared what they thought. Certainty that their opinion of you mattered more than your own. Certainty that they could destabilize you whenever they needed to feel stable. But silence removes that certainty, and without it, they are alone with themselves. Silence doesn't destroy manipulative people because it punishes them. It destroys them because it stops rewarding them. They have built an entire relational economy around your need to be understood. And when you stop participating, the economy collapses. They are left holding scripts no one is reading, performing accusations to an empty room. And the emptiness reflects back something they've spent years avoiding: themselves. But let's not pretend this is easy. Silence costs. It costs relationships you thought were real. It costs the image people had of you. It costs you the comfort of being known, even incorrectly. When you stop explaining, some people will decide you're guilty. They will fill your silence with their worst assumptions, and you will have to let them. You will be misunderstood, villainized. You will lose people who were never actually seeing you, and you'll have to decide if being accurately alone is better than being incorrectly accompanied. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are, rather than who you've been shaped to be. Individuation requires withdrawal. not from the world, but from the roles the world assigns you. The moment you stop defending yourself against projections, you stop carrying other people's shadows. You stop being the container for their disowned fear, rage, and guilt. And you start recovering the energy you've been spending on performances that were never yours. So ask yourself, if your silence causes panic, what were you really giving them? If your absence creates chaos, what were you holding together? If withdrawing your reaction feels like cruelty to them, what does that say about what they needed from you? The answer isn't always that they're a monster. Sometimes the answer is that you were convenient, safe, predictable, a place they could discharge without consequence. And your silence forces them to find another way, or face why they needed you to absorb what they couldn't hold. Manipulative people don't fear losing you. They fear losing access. Access to your doubt, your need to prove yourself, your belief that if you just explain it correctly, they'll finally understand. But understanding was never the goal. Reaction was, and silence ends the game. You'll doubt yourself more than you ever doubted them. You'll replay conversations at 3 in the morning, wondering if you were too cold, too harsh. You'll scroll through old messages looking for proof that your silence was justified. Because we've been taught that silence is aggression, that withholding your words is withholding your humanity, that good people always engage, always explain, always give one more chance. But what they don't tell you is that some people don't want chances. They want supply. There's a difference between someone who's hurt by your silence because they genuinely want to understand you, and someone who's threatened by your silence because they can no longer control the narrative. One will sit in the discomfort and ask what they missed. The other will tell everyone who listen what your silence means. They'll narrate your interior world to anyone who'll validate their version, and you won't be there to correct it. That's the test. Not whether you can stay silent, but whether you can let them be wrong about you and still not break. Because breaking the silence doesn't bring clarity. It brings temporary relief that costs you your position. The moment you re-engage, you've told them that their chaos works. That if they escalate enough, accuse enough, perform enough pain, you'll come back and explain yourself. And in doing so, you'll step back into the role. Not because you want to, but because being misunderstood feels more unbearable than being used. Jung wrote that loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. But what if the loneliness comes from realizing the people around you never wanted to hear those things in the first place? That your need to be understood was being weaponized, turned into a door they could walk through whenever they needed to feel powerful. That's the grief underneath the silence. Not that you've lost someone, but that you've lost the belief that they ever wanted to find you. And yet, even in that grief, there is something clean. Because silence is the end of pretending. It's the moment you stop trying to be digestible. Stop softening your boundaries so they'll stay. Stop translating yourself into a language that makes them comfortable. You become untranslatable. And to the person who needs you to be simple, that feels like betrayal. But to you, it feels like coming home. There's a kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't defend. It doesn't perform. It simply stops participating in frameworks designed to diminish it. And manipulative people can feel that withdrawal like a wound. Not because you've hurt them, but because you've removed yourself as a source. a source of validation, of reaction, of the emotional labor that kept their internal world from collapsing. Your presence was never about connection. It was about function. And silence is the refusal to function in someone else's economy. So they'll call you cold. They'll say you've changed. They'll mourn the version of you that never questioned them. The version that absorbed their projections without resistance. The version that made them feel safe by staying small. And you'll have to let that version die. Not with anger, not with proclamations, just with the quiet understanding that you are no longer available to be that. This is what individuation actually looks like. Not a triumph, just the slow, uncomfortable process of withdrawing your energy from places it was never truly wanted, and sitting with the space that creates, the silence that remains when you stop filling it with explanations, with apologies, with proof of your goodness. It won't feel like power at first. It will feel like loss, like cowardice, like you're doing something wrong by not engaging. You'll be tempted to break it, to fix it, to prove you're not what they're saying. But every time you resist that urge, you take back a piece of yourself, a piece that was never theirs to hold. There's a kind of person who can only exist in relation to your chaos, your confusion, your need to be seen as good. And when you stop providing that, they dissolve. Not because you destroyed them, but because they were never solid to begin with. They were a pattern, a reaction to your reaction. And without you, the pattern has nothing to repeat. So you sit in the silence, not because you're better, not because you've transcended, but because you finally stopped explaining yourself to people who were never asking questions. They were making accusations, and accusations don't need answers. They need audiences. When you stop being the audience, you become sovereign. Not loud, not defensive, just still. And that stillness is not passive. It's the refusal to be written into someone else's script, the refusal to justify your existence, the refusal to defend against phantoms. Silence doesn't destroy manipulative people. It reveals that they were always destroying themselves. You were just the distraction. If this felt like something you needed to hear, stay. There's more here for you.